Confusion deepens as the CBN deadline ends today. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we give you the breaking news from our Nigerian newspaper. I am Sele Elisha Dashom. Of course, I have Rachel Tanzivi here with me. Good morning, Rachel.
Morning, Sele.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Rested well. I'm
I
fine.
tried my
Fine,
best.
thank
How
you.
about you?
Fine, thank you, Rachel. We're live on Facebook and also on YouTube. Do well to follow us on all our social media handles by dropping a comment on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And later on, we'll make sure we open the phone line so you can air your views concerning any story that is of interest to you. And let us move quickly to the paper, start with the leadership, which Rachel will take us down.
On the leadership newspaper, the big story, 15 days to election, President Muhammadu Buhari's exit plan rules out chance of interim government. The writer says CSO's one proponent, President named Boss Mustafa Transition Council Chairman, as federal government clears coast for 3.8 million students to vote. INEC battles with 1,241 pre-election cases, rejects party members as returning officers. NBC approves 67 new broadcast stations, finds 17, sanctions 302. You can continue with that story on page 7. We have Turkey, Syria earthquake, death toll rises to 19,700, UN intervenes, and you can read that on page 6. And insecurity, state guards better than state police, coming from Obasanjo, and you can read that on page 10. And we have Naira swap, your monies are safe in banks. NDIC assures Nigerians. APC Obasake differs on policy suspension. And that's all the news on Friday leadership.
On the Punch newspaper, Buhari orders setting up, I take that story again, Buhari orders setting up transition panel on Valentine's Day. You can read that story on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Federal government sanctioned 302 broadcast stations, issued 67 new licenses. Government vows penalty for fuel marketers rejecting the POS and transfers. You can read more of that story also. And we live in fear as earthquake death tops 20,000. This is coming from the Turkey-based footballer Babajide. You can read more of that on page 8 and 30 of the Punch newspaper. And the big story which is saying presidency, CBN silent on Supreme Court ruling as Nigerians queue in vain at ATMs, bank and terminals of Kaduna, Kogi and Zamfara State. The court had Abubakar Madami's son matter. However, on Thursday, a day before the deadline, commercials in the country will be seized, brought before it by the governor because they were not authorized to speak on the matter. So argued that the governors did not join banks in their suit. When contacted, the top official of Access Bank, who would not want to be quoted, said, "I cannot say yes or no. We know there is a court judgment, so for now there is a Supreme Court judgment and we have not received any further communication from the CBN on it." And we have another top source from EcoBank, while reacting to inquiries by the port, said, "We don't know what will happen yet. You know the deadline is Friday today. We will still collect all Naira notes on Friday, but after that we don't know what will happen." And you know, I really hate the situation that we've been put on have been put as a nation presently, Rachel, because we do not know if today is actually the deadline. If banks cannot even ascertain or they cannot really tell what their stand is right now, then we do not know as customers that are banking with these various banks what we have to see. And if you listen some of the top officials from the two banks I mentioned here, which is Access and EcoBank, that didn't even want to be quoted because they have not yet been given authorization to speak, as saying they do not know, because it's expected that the CBN is supposed to have come out to give, you know, his own, you know, part of the story, or permit me to say he should give us what he feels about. If this is what the Supreme Court have said, what is the CBN saying about it? Is that an extension or not? I know this is a confusion that has been, you know, going on. So we just hope that the CBN will come out and actually make us get clear about the whole situation, so that Nigerians can know the next, you know, step of action they should take.
Like we keep saying it, that the CBN if they are saying that the problem is on hoarding, not scarcity, then they need to do whatever it takes to make sure that these banks are not hoarding this money if they know for sure that what they've given out is supposed to be enough for Nigerians. However, I keep saying that one of the major problems this whole currency redesign is having is the deadline. We've had Naira being redesigned in Nigeria before, and it wasn't between a short period of time that it took a long period of time before the new Naira circulated and then the old Naira was no longer in use. But then that is the number one problem with chaos. Number one, to fade gradually, but this is for them to rush the process. But human being on this country needs to get it, and it's being taken backwards or forward or however it is, whether the deadline sticks or not. But however, the CBN needs to come out and clearly tell Nigerians what it is, that where do we stand regarding these new Naira notes. Are we still going to continue using our own notes? Should we relax, or today is the end, meaning by 11:59 we can't use the old Naira notes, but then tomorrow is just new notes, no new notes or no any other notes. So I just hope that every other person in charge of this should come out and just tell Nigerians, because this uncertainty adds to the hardship rather than solve the problem.
Of course, Richard, I will agree with you in as much as with all of this that is happening. But I believe that this period is short because the Naira being in circulation. And I believe the CBN have played their part in making sure today you were giving, an analysis, taking it down, looking at how much has been recovered back into the bank and how much is in circulation presently. If we are going to look at how much was the ones with this new Naira note medias where bundles are being spread of this new Naira notes and all of that. So I think these are part of bodies, security agency, making sure that nobody is hope the CBN will come out and clarify this whole confusion so that Nigerians will know their fate starting from today or tomorrow. What are we going to do after this story? The bad Senate conductor operatives of these various states need to. Still on the Punch newspaper, council reviews stray couple and son, and we have VC. That's all on the Punch.
On the 30 failed banks, Boss Mustafa heads presidential. More banks closed by the senior on page 4. Downside of the paper, varsities to close, that story on page 6, and we Siwaju Tinubu, and that's all the news on the nation.
Against the cash swap deadline, inclusion, preventing inducement of voters in L5. And of wealth scarcity, NMDPRA vows to sanction filling station rejecting the use of POS machines. And on the state of the nation, silence. You can read more of that story on 14. You can read that also on the front page. And coming from Attorney General of Federation, moves to vacate order, gives reasons why suit should be set aside. CBN are trying solution. And also in Major Gafi Ayu says PDP has brought us shame and we will not continue to retain them in power. You can read more of that on page 5, and that's all on this day newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, CBN keeps mum on Supreme Court order, blames new no scarcity on hoarding. The writer says your money is safe. NDIC assures depositors. Cashless policy may affect troops in the field, coming from NSA. Not all 36 governors with you on move against currency swap, Obaseki tells El Rufai, and you can read all of that story on page 4. Police arrest suspect involved in murder of US. Cargoes trapped at Lagos port as bank suspend operation. The writer says nobody can pay duty, coming from ANLCA, and you can read that on page 5. Atiku in Kano promises to restore its commercial status. Tinubu encouraging his aides to attack Buhari, says leads APC campaign in Sokoto. President Tinubu presents Tinubu to Sultan. This is the Buhari presenting Tinubu to the Sultan, and you can read that on page 3. And still on the polls for this year's election coming soon, federal government orders closure of universities for 3 weeks. Buhari begins May 29 exit process, sets up transition council. And you can read that on page 28. Adwa Investments Westlink iconic villa phase 1 commissioned, and you can read that on page 7. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On Nigerian News Direct, on 2023 Transition Council plans to hand over. Ogun has taken delivery of drawings to track criminals coming from Governor Abiodun. And we have 103.509 billion naira paid to uninsured depositors of liquidated banks coming from the NDIC. And the big story we have, we want to win these elections, Buhari Tinubu to Sultan. And on Ogun Trade Fair, Dangote promises self-sufficiency in all areas of economy. And looking at election fraud, INEC chairman mid VCs warn against nomination of partisan corrupt staff. And on Naira scarcity, we never anticipated behavioral problems trailing the redesign policy coming from the CBN, saying that they never anticipated behavioral problems trailing the redesign policy. And I know these are part of the things that we change. Always you see different things. And so I believe that in as much as the CBN did not see this coming, but it's normal when we have any change in any, whether it's in an institution or whether it's in behavior or anything that is being introduced that is new, definitely there's some behaviors that you will not, that you are permitted to see at the end of the day. And we saw when people get angry, burning left, right, and center, especially when you're hungry and you can't have access to your money. Definitely, people's behavior would definitely tell at the end of the day. So I just hope that next time when we're planning to do something, we should definitely see beyond the just, even as much as I know they're seeing the future on what we'll do, but they never saw all of these behaviors that we are seeing presently, governors suing the federal government, left, right, and center, and all of that. So we hope that next time when we are preparing for any change, these are part of the things that we'll see at the end of the day.
I think the CBN can only say that, but you're in Nigeria, and also the CBN is not some international body coming to Nigeria and not knowing who their people are. Let me put it like that. We see protests even on fuel scarcity. What makes the CBN think that there won't be a protest when there's Naira scarcity? Because it automatically makes Naira a commodity because it's scarce. Because you take away whatever power the Naira has as a currency and makes it a commodity now that it's scarce and people are actually buying it. You know what you're doing. You know the plans you intended to do. We say, you understand, the CBN had a plan to make the Naira to circulate in the bank. Automatically, it means cash becomes scarce. It's deliberate on their side because you made it clear to us that the reason behind this redesign is you want Naira to go back to the CBN to circulate in the banks rather than outside. So automatically, there's going to be scarcity. You know that. And if Nigerians now have to start buying Naira, it becomes a commodity because they are buying it from POS agents, from people that have turned selling Naira to be a business. So how would you say that you didn't see this reaction coming? You know your Nigerians very well. When anything doesn't go wrong, there's always anger because there's already that underlying anger in the country where we see a lot of already there are so many things that are not going well, and then you now make money scarce, turns it to a commodity because people have to now buy it, and you are surprised of this behavior. As an individual, I'm not, and CBN should know the outcome of everything do as a body, because you might have sat down months after months thinking of what will be the outcome of the policies you're putting out, and then of course for some reason, in some ways, Nigerians will have to react in some ways. Definitely,
of course, Richard. So we hope that next time we see all of this
we
coming.
hope so.
We have two picture stories. One, you can see Governor Abiodun of Ogun State, and also downside we can see the Governor of Lagos State. And also we have a column here, Femi Adesina's column on the back page, so you can do it by grabbing the newspaper and reading more detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On the Oshun Defender, on crime, my husband's killer must face the wrath of law. Widow of slain fashion designer. We have campus news. Oshun government reverses OSCO tech tuition fee after protest from students. Patients' relatives groan as cash crunch slows down treatment in Uni Osun Teaching Hospital, and you can read all of that story on page 5. Osun Election Tribunal panel erred in law verdict against constitution coming from INEC, and you can read that story on page 2. We have the agony still persists, where we see picture stories of queues at the fuel station, queues at ATM, queues at banks, and how cars are queuing up and there is no fuel. At the downside of the paper, bad roads, late night meter monitoring, top Ogun's residents complain in January. And you can read all of that on page 4, and hoping to hear what the government plans to do on what its citizens are complaining about. And that's all the news on Osun Defender.
On a New Telegraph newspaper, we have infrastructure Nigeria to benefit from OPEC fund, AFC $50 million pack. You can read more on the front page and also page 4. Nigeria resumed gas export to Europe with 655,000 tons. You can find that on page 28. Buhari approved transition committee, signed executive order 14, and we have the SGF Mustafa to chair that panel. You can read more on page 6. Naira scarcity may affect military operations, coming from the National Security Agency. Reps meet minuting and printing board orders today, so you can read more of that story on page 8. And on PPP, takes over from Bankude at Ogun CP, and you can read more on page 4 and 6. The big story still on the old bank notes. Confusion as bank insists on today's deadline. Federal government will obey Supreme Court ruling, says Madami. CBN yet to officially inform leaders of any extension. Countdown clock on Apex Bank website still has February 10 deadline last night. And we have NASBEC student and youth to shun violent protests, and I think this is the right step in the right direction coming from the National Association of the students. They have to stay calm because they will likely be used as talks and all of this thing if they are idle. So I just support the national, NAS by saying that students should stay out of any trouble of any sort, because these politicians do not mean well for those of them that are evil. So I just really, really hope that we do the right thing too. Still a New Telegraph newspaper on the state of the nation. Bode George calls on ex-leaders, presidential candidates to speak up. Says Naira fuel scarcity suffocating Nigerians. You can read that on page 5. On our presidential campaigns, we are going to revolutionalize Nigeria, coming from Obi. You can read that story on page 5, 6, and 8. And we have other stories on NPC will deploy digital tech in 2023 census. On election, NUC orders closure of varsities, inter-varsity centers. We are scrutinizing lists of returning coalition officers, INEC tells the VC. And then Catholic agency called for watertight security in FCT community. And let me read a little of that. The Academic Staff Union of Universities have condemned the directive of the National Universities Commission to the Committee of the Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities that universities should be shut to enable students to participate in the forthcoming general election. The NUC gave the directive in a letter on Tuesday addressed to the vice chancellors of all universities and directors of inter-university centers. The commission noted that the directive was based on the instruction of the Minister of Education, Adamu. The letter, partly read as vice chancellors of all universities and directors, chief executive of inter-university centers, we are quite aware the 2023 general election have been scheduled to hold on Saturday, February 25, 2023, for the presidential and the National Assembly election, and Saturday, March 1st, 2023, for the governorship and State House of Assemblies election. In view of the foregoing and concern expressed about the security of staff, students, and properties of our respective institutions, the Minister of Education, Adamu, has, following extensive consultations with relevant security agency, directed that all universities and inter-university centers be shut down and academic activities be suspended between February 22nd and March 14, 2023. And I think this is actually the right step, in as much as ASU is not really happy with this directive, because they feel possibly maybe the minister actually bypassed them. There was no meeting. The letter just went straight to the the VCs on that. But I remember here on the paper when we were pushing that students should be given the opportunity to exercise their franchise by going to vote during the election, because if they are not part of the election, I mean, we are ruling out about over 3 million Nigerians will not participate in the election. That is really, really sad. So I do not know why the academic staff union are not really excited with this story, but I just hope that whatever it is, they will be, they will reconcile together, come together, meet up, and believe that yes, I know that like the likely of some universities that are behind, especially when you're looking at the academic calendar, they're trying to catch up. Some universities just concluded the first semester exam and hoping to resume on the 16th of February and all of that, and you can see with this election by the corner. But I believe that if we do what is expected of us to do as Nigerians, this election will come in and be very smooth, and at the end of the day everybody will go back and the academic calendar will be back as usual again. So I hope that the academic staff union will give their support to to the INEC while conducting the election, obey the directive given by the Minister of Education, and also work together with the VCs to make sure that students are being given the permission to leave the schools and go participate in the elections.
Like, ASU is not above the federal government. You are in union still under the federal government of Nigeria. There's hierarchy and there is somebody at the top that you're still under, regardless of how that. And I think duties is like, let's look at our soldiers, for example. When you choose, when do I save a Nigerian or not? And it's same thing for election. It's not for ASU to decide whether students should go and vote or not. As long as you're 18 plus, it's a duty for you to vote as a Nigerian. So the option of whether students should have a break to vote or not shouldn't even be a problem in the first place. But we always allow things that should just be a law to be something for deliberation, and people feel they have the right to determine whether Nigerian students should vote or not. They are the citizens of this country also, and it is their duty to make sense because we allow it. Like I keep saying, when it comes to, for example, the local government autonomy, I am deviating because I feel this is one thing that the federal government is supposed to put their foot on it and say it must be, because we have seen that it might not solve 100% of local government problems, but if it can solve 50%, then it's good enough for it to be implemented, and not whether the governors want it or not, because governors will come and go, but the state and its local government remains, and you have to look for a continuous growth and development. And if local government autonomy will give it that, then why are you allowing the governors to decide whether they want it or not?
The governors are interfering, Richard, in this whole thing, because this is supposed to be something between the legislature, from the House of Reps over there down to the states,
down
House
to the
of
state,
Assembly.
exactly.
So I do not know why the governors always interfere. Sorry for interjecting.
No,
but
it's okay. So I feel it's the same thing concerning voting. Why would ASU feel the government has to ask them to give permission to students to go and vote when it is the right and the duty of the students to vote? So these are some of the things that I wish we would grow past them in Nigeria, that when it comes to election, everybody should go and vote. It should even get to the point where if you don't vote, it's a crime. Why are you not voting? Why are you not deciding what happens to your country when you have the power to do it? So I just hope that we will move past this as a country.
Of course, of course. And I would like to read a few other stories I see on the paper. We have on the PMS crisis. Depot owners begin sale at 172 naira ex depot prices. We have some riders following that story on page 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have a study that says nicotine exposure during pregnancy increased sudden infant death rates. You can read more of that study on page 26. And that's all the new Telegraph. But before I move further, Rachel, we've said quite a lot.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from our viewers what they feel about the confusion training, the deadline for the new naira note. What do you feel about the varsities are being asked to actually shut down from February 22nd down to March so that students can participate in the election? A lot of stories are training on the paper this morning, so we really love to hear from you. Please do not go anywhere. When we come back, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television. I'm Seda Elisha and Rachel Tanzi is still here with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Yes, we'll be looking at the stories that have been making rounds on all our papers. We look at the confusion training, the deadline for the new Naira actually starting from today, the old Naira fading from today, and also most banks, or will I say, we have a lot of bank branches actually closing down because they do not have cash to give customers. And these are many of the stories that what we have been seeing on the papers this morning. So our phone numbers are displayed on your screen. We'd love to hear from you. You can also drop your comment on our Facebook and YouTube pages so we can read your comment as they drop. And let's move further with the paper, looking at the Business Day newspaper.
On the Business Day newspaper, soldiers pull rank, shunt queue to cash naira. You can continue with that on page 20. At over 100k naira, I pass my neighbor generator lives up to its name. Big plans to graze Nigerian skies as long-haul flights return. Agriculture must move beyond smallholder model. This is coming from business leaders. Mixed reactions trail NUC's order to close varsities for 2023 polls, and you can turn on page 8 and read more of that story. We have a picture story where we can see rescue victims of the earthquake in Turkey, and that's all the news on Business Day.
All right, let's take a look at a little of sport, looking at upon Sport Extract, where we have Napoli legend Hills Oshime partnership, and we have Ogini Onaze exclusive. We had a lot of disagreement between the opening two games, of course. Even the internet and media buried us, tagging us draw group Eagles. The pressure was so much that we fought one another. We have other story. Eagles play Guinea-Bissau in Morocco. We have Joshua keen to become three-time champion. No regret choosing Nigeria over England, coming from Lukman. We have other stories that are flying on the front page of the paper. 10 years after AFCON Trump, it's a feeling I will never forget, coming from Mba, and many other stories. So for sport lovers, you can do well by grabbing the sponge in the Sport Extra and read more story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Independent, Ijong over rejection of POS machines. Federal government directs closure. Page 2. At the downside of the paper, 5 APC Taraba Guba aspirants threaten to boycott planned primaries, and you can find that on page 6. We have a picture story where we can see the president with Abdullahi Adamu and then with Bola Asiwaju Tinubu, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
I would love to have just, bypassed the story, Richard, but it caught my attention coming from Fashola saying Jandor, the cameraman, lacks the capacity to govern Lagos. I do not know why we are so keen on attacking people's
Personality,
personality
yeah.
in a bid of selling our own candidates. Can't you just bring to Nigerians what you have to say rather than attacking? I mean, in advertising, there are rules that guide it. When you want to advertise your good, you don't have to
You don't
attack
have to
another
tarnish
person's,
someone's
tarnish
image, yeah.
another person's, goods because you're trying to sell your own. And the reason why I'm bringing this is because I'm taking my mind back to the back and forth coming from El-Rufai and the Labour Party candidate when he said he is a Nollywood actor and people shouldn't pay attention to him, and he went further to giving the percentage that he have in Anambra and all of that. And then we saw the reply coming from the Labour Party candidate and various attacks that have been coming, for especially looking, will I say, in a bit of campaign. I believe that we need to learn to bypass all of this, and we are grown as a nation. I
Yes,
mean,
we
Nigeria
are.
is over 60, so it's expected that there are basic things we should do. We've spent over 20 something years as a democratic nation, so that is to say that we're supposed to have gotten to a level where when it comes to politics we should be matured enough. There are certain words that is not supposed to be, regardless of who you are. Nigerians should be the ones to determine the candidate they want to vote into power, not coming from anybody that is holding a public office at the end of the day. Why not concentrate on your office? What have you done so far? Looking at transport, looking at our road, looking at housing, have you done your best for Nigerians? Can Nigerians really vouch for you and say, yes, this person have served well, rather than, attacking people?
Bringing
I
down
think
someone.
just work on, your own sector, work on your own state. Let me see what I can do here. Let people be the one to speak for me, not me always
Yes.
wanting to attack another person. So this just caught my attention, and I feel that it's important that we learn that as individuals, even not in politics, but as individuals. This is
Yes.
something you should build rather than attacking people's, character, attacking we have character assassination going on left, right, and center. Concentrate on building your own self. I think that is the way people can see and say, yes, this person is mature, and we can give he or she our votes at the end of the day.
Yeah, and this comment shows only how shallow your thought will be concerning somebody, because why would him be a cameraman be the reason you feel he can run for governor? Perhaps if you even want to discredit somebody, can't you bring something more credible? If it's a concerning thing that you feel, okay, for real, this person can't run for office because of certain things that you know about his background, and Nigerians need to know that, okay, you could be making a mistake if you vote this person because this is the person's track record. There's this, and that, and for that reason, and you have your proof that for this and that reason, this person is not capable of running for a position. It's fine. But why are you bringing things that don't matter? I think in the end, if you find yourself in, you end up looking like the one who don't know what you're saying. You end up looking like the one who is not competent, who is not credible. You end up making yourself look bad for saying something this silly about somebody and your reason to why he can't be governor. So we're honestly looking forward to Nigeria that we outgrow these kinds of comments coming from big people that we feel should say better and should be the ones in the position telling Nigerians not to do certain things, but then it comes from them because we have Fashola, of course, is big Lagos. He did well at the time he was governor and even still as a minister. But then why wouldn't you say something more credible? And if you have your proof concerning a candidate, say something better than him being a cameraman, because there are instances where people came from nowhere and became very good leaders and did very well. We have many examples like that. So we just hope that if you're in the position to make Nigeria better, please make it better. You should be in the position where you tell people not to say wrong things about people and they would actually listen to you, rather than you being the one saying things about people that are not relevant.
Of course, of course. Let's take a look at the Daily Sun newspaper. Take their money, give us your votes. Obi tell Nigerians. You can find that story on page 27. Abia Guber, Supreme Court affirms Eminike as APC candidate. You can find that story on page 28. And on the polls, federal government directs closure of universities and others. We are 90% ready for elections coming from INEC. So that means you should get your fingers crossed, get your PVC very close. For those who don't know where it is, better start checking your drawers, dusting, and
Yes,
getting your PVC ready, because February 25th, we all should line up and go
sure.
exercise our rights. And we have APC urges Buhari to respect Supreme Court order, directs Emifele to comply. You can find out also on page 27. Not will vote credible candidates coming from Arewa elders. Council of State meets today on the Naira swap. Federal government orders oil marketers to accept POS mobile transfers or face sanctions. Government handover, SGF heads transition cancelled as Buhari signed Executive Order 14. Soldiers feared kill monarch beheaded as violence erupts in Delta community. You can read more on page 27. APC planning to hack INEC servers coming from Tambuwal, and that's an allegation. Ruling party fighting for own notes to buy votes coming from the PDP. And we have the picture story showing the accident that took place in Lagos, Ibadan. So you can do well, grab the Daily Sun newspaper and read any story that's of interest to you.
On the Vanguard newspaper, federal government orders varsities short for general elections. Buhari prepares for May 29 handover, sets up transition council. And the big story on Vanguard, all notes will obey Supreme Court ruling, says federal government. The writer says parties, other stakeholders split over Supreme Court ruling. Obey Supreme Court order, APC tells Buhari. APC using court to arm twist CBN to buy votes coming from CNPP. We're against opposition of Apex court decision and coming from NNPP. Naira redesign policy ill-timed Prodi implement coming from Kachuku. Why CBN must obey Supreme Court expert order coming from Falana, and the misguided elements against court order coming from Matawali. And you can continue with that story on page 5. Currency swap policy affecting military operations. Maureen Alogo appointed NSIT MD CEO as federal government reconstitutes board. And on petrol shortage, independent marketers begin lifting at 172 per litre. Bank workers threaten to down tool over attacks, and you can read all of that on page 19. We have a sports column that says Messi's luck can make PSG win Champions League coming from Okocha. And we have another one where you can read all of that on page 16 coming from Dunu Kobara, and on page 17 Owe La Kemfa. And you can read all of those stories on page 17 and 16. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Buhari set up transition cancelled ahead of May 29. The big story, uncertainty as Council of State meets in Abuja. Election deferment, ING, scarcity of new Naira on the front burner. We hope that they discuss and deliberate and come up with something reasonable at the end of the day. Supreme Court affirms Eminike as APC Abia governorship candidate. And we have from NUC orders closure of universities nationwide. We have a picture story here, which you can do well by grabbing the Daily Times newspaper and read more detail of any story that catch your interest.
On the Guardian newspaper, Naira fuel scarcity. TUC on alert, youth begin 14-day nationwide protest. Town planners seek stiffer penalty for building collapse offenders. NMDPRA Ibman agrees to 170 Naira ex-depot price, and this is still on fuel crisis. Gunmen ambush, kill 4 military officers in Delta. And the big story, Buhari prepares for May 29, sets up transition, cancel, the writer says, gives two slots to successor. 2023 elections, federal government orders closure of varsities for 3 weeks. Lecturers will swear to oath of neutrality, says INEC. INEC laments 1,241 pre-election suit, seeks pro bono services from NBA. Still on the Guardian newspaper, on cancer, dealing with high incidence, cost of containment. And you would like to read that story, find it on page 4 and 5. At the downside of the paper, Falana attacks CBN to obey Supreme Court ex parte order, and you can read that on page 6. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with
Welcome,
me. I was just going through the president preparing for his handing over. It's really, we really have to applaud him for setting the ball rolling early enough, so we do not have because he's keeping to his word. I remember where he said he's not exceeding 10 hours in the office. So it's really applauding for us to actually applaud him for setting the ball rolling. So all we have to keep our fingers down to be sure that INEC is ready to conduct the election, because this handover is going to be the third since we, welcome democracy in 1999 and all of that. So I really hope that this transition will be a smooth one as usual, just the way, the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, handed over, to the president Muhammadu Buhari without any hitch in 2015. Everything was smooth. I remember people applauded, Goodluck Jonathan for not even going to court saying he did not agree with the result and all of that. So I hope that Nigerians will come out on February 25th, go out there, vote the candidate of your choice, and I hope that the security agency will play their part by making sure that security is very tight and that nobody will be used any sign of any threat or anything. They should spring up and do the right thing that is expected.
And you just said something very sensitive about the past administration, where Goodluck didn't go to court and try to create any chaos and say he didn't agree with the election results. And this should also go to the present presidential candidate from every party, Peter Obi, Bola Tinubu, Konkoso, and Atiku and the rest, because whoever should win should just accept victory in Nigeria, because we're in a very sensitive period of time where Nigerians are anticipating this election and can't wait for a new administration. So regardless of who comes out, I want us to have a safe handing over. In as much as election will be free and fair, Buhari is assuring us of that. The INEC chairman is also assuring us of that. Let it also be free and fair and safe handing over, where there is no candidate trying to cause chaos because they do not agree with the results and all of that.
Of course, that is what we all wish for, a safe handing over. Thank you so much to the crew members. Thank you to our followers. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you to the Equa executive. Until we come your way again, do have a blessed day.